November 7th, 1944. Stolberg, Germany. The 3rd Armored Division Maintenance Depot lay silent under a gray winter sky, except for the solitary Sherman tank that sat like a wounded beast. Its transmission lay in pieces, a casualty of yet another mechanical failure. Official reports labeled it a total loss. M4A3 serial number 3018724 had surrendered its final drive for the 3rd time in just 2 months. A common affliction for Shermans in the merciless German winter. Dear friends, if this video has reached you, it's not by chance. Right now, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. Write a number from 1 to 5 in the comments. I will personally respond to the first 50 comments, and make sure to watch the video until the end. Most mechanics would have shrugged, signed the paperwork, and moved on. But Technical Sergeant Curtis Lee Hammond didn't move on. He stood before the disabled tank, his face unreadable, a look his men had learned to dread. Hammond was 32, a former Moonshine Runner from East Tennessee, a man who had learned more about coaxing engines into obedience under fire than any manual could ever teach. And the men whispered among themselves he was about to do something reckless again. Last month, he converted 3 half-tracks to run on captured German fuel, Private James Murphy murmured to Corporal David Chen. Hammond turned to his crew, a mischievous grin spreading across his weathered face. "Gentlemen," he drawled in his thick Tennessee accent, "this tank is about to become the fastest Sherman in Europe. I'm going to make her outrun a Jeep." The depot fell silent, broken only by nervous, incredulous laughter. Shermans weighed 33 tons and crawled at 26 miles per hour. Jeeps? 65. To the practical mind, what Hammond proposed was absurd, impossible. "Sergeant." "That's mechanically impossible," Chen ventured, his voice tight with worry. "The powertrain can't take it. You'd be court-martialed." Hammond's grin widened, more daring than ever. "Probably," he admitted. "But this tank's already scrap. We're losing more tanks to mechanical failure than to enemy fire. And I know this Continental R975 engine better than Detroit ever did. There's 200 more horsepower hiding in her, just waiting." What his men didn't know was that Hammond had spent months on clandestine experiments, discovering that the Sherman's powertrain operated far below its theoretical potential. Rated at 400 horsepower for reliability, it was deliberately tamed. Hammond, who had spent a youth coaxing impossibly high performance from moonshine running engines, knew that reliable often meant wasted potential. Curtis Hammond's story began long before the war. In March 1942, after being arrested for the 14th time, a federal judge gave him a stark choice: 5 years in prison or enlistment in the Army. Hammond chose the uniform. Basic training at Fort Knox revealed his extraordinary gift. He could diagnose engine failures by sound alone, dissecting mechanical mysteries invisible to others. Instructors marveled, but they also worried about his complete disdain for procedure. Manuals, he argued, were written by men who had never had to keep an engine running while dodging revenue agents' bullets. By September 1943, Hammond had earned the rank of technical sergeant, despite 17 reprimands for unauthorized modifications and 43 for insubordination. Yet 3 battalion commanders had commended him for keeping their units moving with methods no one else dared try. Then came Normandy and the brutal lesson of mechanical reality. The 3rd Armored hit Omaha Beach on June 23, 1944. The enemy wasn't just German guns. It was the constant failure of their own tanks. For every Sherman destroyed by enemy fire, 2 more were felled by mechanical breakdowns. Hammond abandoned protocol. If parts were missing, he fabricated them. If manuals insisted repairs were impossible, he performed them anyway. And most dangerously, he began to push engines past their intended limits. Studying the Continental R9Y75, Hammond realized it shared its core design with aircraft engines capable of 550 horsepower. The difference wasn't construction, it was tuning. In late-night experiments on written-off tanks, he proved it. Tanks that once limped at 26 m/s now thundered at 32, with acceleration that left crews giddy. Captain Robert Morrison confronted him in September 1944. "Sergeant Hammond, these unauthorized modifications violate regulations. They void warranties and risk reliability." Hammond's voice was calm, unflinching. "Sir, warranties don't mean much when we're losing tanks to breakdowns. I ain't compromising reliability. I'm improving it. These engines are detuned so far below capacity, they're actually less reliable." Morrison struggled to respond. The modified tanks worked flawlessly. "I can't officially approve this," he admitted at last, "but I won't stop you, as long as it works. If the division finds out, court-martial awaits. Clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." By November 1944, Hammond was ready to attempt something the world had never seen in a Sherman. Over 6 weeks of nights spent in the depot, he rebuilt serial number 3051-1124 from the ground up. He raised the engine's compression ratio from 6.7 to 8.5 by meticulously machining cylinder heads. He reworked the carburetor using jets scavenged from a captured German aircraft. Ignition timing advanced by 8 degrees. The supercharger? Boost pressure increased by 20%. To handle this fury, he reinforced the transmission with steel from a destroyed Panther tank, modified gear ratios for speed, and strengthened the final drives with extra plating. The suspension received heavier springs from M10 tank destroyers and upgraded shock absorbers. Every system was tuned for a singular purpose: speed. December 20th arrived, and the tank was ready. At 0200 hours on December 21st, Hammond assembled his crew for the maiden test. Murphy at the wheel, Chen assisting, Jackson on the gun, Foster loading, and Hammond himself commanding. The Continental roared, a deep, aggressive growl that seemed to echo across the cold depot. A monster reborn, ready to defy expectations. Murphy slammed the transmission into gear, and the Sherman lunged forward. 20 miles per hour, already beyond the tank's standard limits. At 25, they were exceeding the official maximum. Murphy's grin stretched ear to ear. "Sergeant," Hammond commanded, eyes gleaming with that mixture of excitement and audacity. "She's still pulling strong. Keep it going." At 35 miles per hour, Murphy's confident grin wavered, replaced by astonishment. 40 miles per hour brought them into what Hammond jokingly called Jeep territory. At 45, Chen called over the intercom, steady and professional. "Sergeant, engine temperature is elevated but acceptable. Oil pressure's good. This engine is happy." Then, at 47 miles per hour, they passed the timing marker. Murphy slammed the brakes. Silence filled the tank. Every crew member sat frozen, unable to breathe, until Murphy's laughter broke the tension. "We just did 47 in a Sherman," he gasped. "Nobody will believe this." Hammond meticulously checked every system. Track tension, suspension, engine. Everything was in perfect order. He had done the impossible. He had built a Sherman capable of outrunning a Jeep. 3 days later, Sherman's serial number 3051824, now famously nicknamed Moonshine Runner, received orders to join the Divisional Reserve. The Battle of the Bulge had erupted on December 16th, demanding every available tank. Morrison confronted Hammond with a mixture of skepticism and authority. "Sergeant, the division requires every operational tank. That's your modified tank, isn't it?" "Yes, sir." "If this fails in combat, I'll make sure you spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth," Morrison said. "But if it saves lives, I'll recommend you for a medal." The tank goes to war, and so do you. Hammond assembled his crew. Murphy remained the driver, Chen as assistant driver. Veterans Johnson and O'Brien joined as gunner and loader. Christmas Eve was consumed with preparation. 9 7.75mm rounds loaded, thousands of machine gun rounds stacked, fuel tanks filled to the brim, every system verified. By midnight, Moonshine Runner was combat ready. Christmas morning, the 3rd Armored began moving south. The weather was merciless, the temperature plunging below 20 degrees. The convoy crept along icy roads, a cautious, deliberate advance. On December 27th, near Houghton, Belgium, Moonshine Runner was ready for her moment. A German company had broken through American lines, threatening to cut off 2 infantry regiments. 16 tanks, including Moonshine Runner, were ordered to intercept. Intelligence reported at least 12 Panthers, supported by self-propelled guns and motorized infantry. The Americans were outnumbered and outgunned. Panthers boasted superior armor, firepower, and optics, but the Germans had no idea they were about to meet a Sherman moving at impossible speeds. The Americans deployed an ambush. Moonshine Runner took the extreme flank, a position Hammond specifically requested. Mobility was key to his plan. At 1400 hours, German forces appeared, 800 yards distant. The ambush detonated. 16 Shermans opened fire. The lead Panther took 3 hits and ground to a halt. The second Panther's 88mm gun spoke once, and an American Sherman exploded. Within 3 minutes, 4 American tanks burned. 2 Panthers were disabled. The Americans were losing, fighting on German terms. Hammond assessed the situation with icy calm. What was needed was a bold, unorthodox approach. He keyed the intercom. "Murphy, remember how fast this girl moves?" "How could I forget, Sergeant?" "Good. We're flanking this entire position at full speed. This is going to get interesting." Murphy didn't hesitate. He stomped the accelerator. Moonshine Runner surged forward. The modified engine roared like a wild beast. 33 tons of steel accelerated with a shocking rapidity. German commanders noticed the lone Sherman charging, but dismissed it as suicide. Panthers traversed turrets to engage, but something was wrong. The Sherman was moving impossibly fast, accelerating like a light tank. At 30 miles per hour, German gunners found their shots missing as the Sherman outpaced their turret traverse. At 35 miles per hour, Moonshine Runner was a blur, streaking across the flank faster than anything of its size should move. Hammond's plan was deceptively simple. The fastest vehicle usually wins. He wasn't slugging it out at medium range. He was using speed to reach the vulnerable rear armor of German tanks. In 90 seconds, Moonshine Runner covered 1,200 yards, circling German positions, while their crews scrambled in disbelief. Several fired at the speeding Sherman, but hitting a target moving over 35 miles per hour was impossible. Emerging behind the column, where Panther armor was thinnest, Hammond issued his orders. "Halt. Gunner 3 Panthers, rear aspect, 400 to 600 yards. Make every shot count." Johnson, the veteran gunner, traversed smoothly, acquired the nearest Panther, and fired. The armor-piercing round penetrated the engine deck. The German tank stopped, crew abandoning ship. Johnson moved to the second target, another penetration. The Panther erupted, turret lifting skyward. The third Panther attempted to traverse, but Johnson fired first. Another kill. In 30 seconds, Moonshine Runner had destroyed 3 Panthers. The psychological effect was devastating. German forces, suddenly under fire from an impossible position, faltered. The advance stalled. American tanks pressed the advantage. 20 minutes of furious combat followed. 8 Panthers destroyed, 3 by Moonshine Runner, 4 disabled. American losses, 6 Shermans. Hammond evaluated the tank. The violent maneuvering had strained every system, yet the modifications held. Engine temperature elevated, but acceptable. Oil pressure good. Transmission flawless. The tank had performed the impossible and survived. By evening, word had spread. Hammond was summoned to division headquarters, expecting a court-martial. Instead, Brigadier General Doyle Hickey reviewed the after-action reports. "Sergeant Hammond," Hickey began, "commanders tell me your Sherman moved at impossible speeds. German prisoners insist they faced a new supertank. I'm also informed you made unauthorized modifications. Explain." Hammond answered with honesty. "Sir," Hammond began, calm but unflinching, "I've improved tank performance through modifications to compression, fuel delivery, supercharger boost, and ignition timing. I've reinforced transmissions. Yes, these violate regulations, but they work." Captain Morrison raised an eyebrow. "How much faster?" Hammond didn't hesitate. "Standard Sherman maxes out at 26 miles per hour, sir. Mine hit 45 to 48. Acceleration is sharper, climbing is easier, and rough terrain no longer slows her down." Morrison's eyes widened. "And the cost?" $72 per tank, Hammond replied. "Installation takes 4 days. And the reliability, sir. They're more reliable than stock Shermans. The Continental is over-engineered for 400 horsepower. It's happier producing 450 to 500. Engines last longer at their optimal design point. Officially, I know nothing. Unofficially, I train mechanics in the procedures. We're modifying 20 tanks as a test program." "Questions?" Morrison asked. "What do I call this officially, sir?" asked Hickey, a young officer with a grin. "Tank Performance Enhancement Program," Hammond said, his voice carrying quiet authority. Over the next 6 weeks, Hammond personally trained 8 mechanics in the art of modification. Every step was hands-on, meticulously supervised. Engine removal, cylinder head machining, carburetor modification, ignition advancement, supercharger adjustments, transmission reinforcement, final drive strengthening, suspension upgrades, all documented with precision. By mid-February 1945, 20 modified tanks rolled out, assigned across the 3rd Armored Division. Hammond rode with them on several combat missions. The crew's response was unanimous. Drivers raved about acceleration and speed. Commanders praised the tactical flexibility. The tanks excelled in rapid strikes, flanking maneuvers, and escaping danger. Mechanical reliability matched Hammond's promises. Modified tanks averaged 1/500 meters between failures, on par with standard Shermans. The cost-benefit was compelling. $72 and 4 days labor for a 35% increase in mobility. Hammond's incremental innovations accumulated into a tangible strategic advantage. Requests poured in from other units, though Hammond understood that the work required skilled hands. Less experienced mechanics attempting the modifications often failed. In March 1945, Hammond presented his findings at Army Ground Forces headquarters in Paris. 2 colonels, a brigadier general, and 3 ordnance engineers attended. He confidently outlined the theoretical basis, presented combat data from 43 missions, and walked through every procedural detail. Ordnance engineers were skeptical, insisting the Continental engine couldn't safely produce the claimed power. "With respect, gentlemen," Hammond said evenly, "I'm not claiming anything. I'm showing data from 3 months of combat. You tell me what the engine can't do. I show you what it has already done. There's a difference between theory and reality." Brigadier General Thomas Rodri nodded. "The sergeant has a point. Theory aside, he has combat evidence. I propose official tests at Aberdeen Proving Ground. If modifications hold up, we implement. If they fail, we shut it down." 2 weeks later, Aberdeen became the proving ground for Hammond's vision. Exhaustive trials over 3 days confirmed his claims. Top speed, 46.2 miles per hour. Acceleration 0 to 30 in 23 seconds versus 41 for a standard Sherman. Hill climbing ability improved 37%. 500-meter endurance tests completed without failure. The official test report, April 9, 1945, declared Hammond's modifications a significant combat enhancement at minimal cost, with reliability fully acceptable. Immediate implementation across Europe was recommended. Authorization came April 15th from Supreme Headquarters. Maintenance companies were now cleared to perform the Hammond modifications, officially named the Enhanced Mobility Program. Tankers, however, had their own names: Hammond Tanks, or the Moonshine Specials. By May 8th, when Germany surrendered, more than 300 Shermans had received Hammond's touch. Units reported 23% fewer losses. Modified tanks averaged 1.7 enemy kills versus 1.1 for unmodified Shermans. The post-war legacy was equally remarkable. Army studies later concluded that Hammond's work exemplified field innovation that should be encouraged. Continental Motors engineers interviewed him, astonished that a self-taught mechanic had unlocked performance potential they had overlooked. Several modifications influenced post-war tank designs. The company offered Hammond a consulting role. He politely declined, saying he'd had enough of engines. Technical Sergeant Curtis Hammond received the Bronze Star in May 1945. The citation praised his innovations, carefully omitting the unauthorized modifications. He was promoted to Master Sergeant and discharged in November 1945. Returning to Tennessee, Hammond left moonshining behind. In Gatlinburg, he opened a modest garage specializing in engine rebuilding and performance upgrades. He lived quietly, married in 1947, raised 3 children, and worked until retirement in 1979. In 1983, military historian Dr. Robert Zaloga uncovered Hammond's story in declassified records. He interviewed the sergeant and documented the program. Zaloga dedicated an entire chapter to Hammond's work. In 1985, Hammond attended a 3rd Armored reunion, his first reunion with former comrades in 40 years. Tankers lined up to thank him. One commander said, "Your modifications saved my crew twice. Once outrunning 3 Panthers, once reaching a bridge before the Germans blew it." Hammond's legacy extended far beyond World War II. Field modifications informed by combat experience became standard doctrine. Later, tanks were designed with higher power margins. His philosophy: test it, modify it, ignore rules that don't work, became embedded in American military culture. Curtis Hammond passed away on March 17, 1992, at the age of 79. His obituary mentioned his military service in passing, but offered few details. Yet at his small, private funeral, something remarkable happened. More than 50 elderly men appeared, former tankers who had traveled from across the country, drawn by a debt of gratitude that had never faded. One frail man approached Hammond's widow. His voice trembled with emotion. "Ma'am, your husband saved my life. I was 19, driving a Sherman, terrified because the German tanks were better. Then I got Curtis's modified tank. The first time I felt how fast she moved, I knew I had a chance. That speed saved me 3 times. I got to come home, have children, see my grandchildren, because Curtis figured out how to make a tank faster." Hammond's widow was moved to tears. These were stories she had never heard, glimpses into a side of her husband she had barely known. The quiet mechanic, the tinkerer, had changed the course of armored warfare and saved hundreds of lives. In 2003, the National World War II Museum acquired one of the few surviving Hammond-modified Shermans. Curators painstakingly restored it to running condition, preserving every ingenious modification. In 2004, former veterans gathered for the first demonstration. When the engine roared and the Sherman accelerated, with that impossible speed still looking wrong for a vehicle of its size. Old soldiers smiled, some wept. History, alive once more, thundered across the floor. The museum exhibit now includes extensive documentation, technical drawings, photographs, and testimonials. A placard reads, "Technical Sergeant Curtis Hammond increased Sherman speed over 70% while maintaining reliability through unauthorized experimentation and stubborn determination." His work exemplifies American field innovation and the principle that sometimes the best solutions come from those closest to the problem. Hammond's story raises profound questions about innovation, authority, and expertise. He had no engineering degree, no credentials, no official authority. Yet he possessed deep practical knowledge, fearless empiricism, and an unshakable confidence in observation over received wisdom. His background as a moonshiner proved unexpectedly perfect, maximizing engine performance with limited resources, improvising boldly, and trusting intuition when authorities insisted it couldn't be done. This tale illuminates the tension between innovation and regulation. Rules exist for good reason, but rigid adherence can stifle progress. The Army's response evolved appropriately, initially skeptical, ultimately supportive. This institutional flexibility reflected the best of American military culture. Every tanker whose life was saved by faster acceleration. Every crew who escaped pursuing Panthers. Every soldier who came home because Hammond's modifications gave them a fighting chance. They were the true measure of success. The Bronze Star, the museum display, the book chapters, they were honors, yes, but secondary. The real memorial was in the lives saved, in families spared grief. The mad mechanic who made Sherman's outrun Jeeps proved that expertise comes in many forms. Sometimes the best solutions emerge from unexpected sources. When backed by skill, observation, and results, unconventional thinking can change the world. Curtis Hammond took broken tanks, impossible problems, and engines pushed past their limits and transformed them into weapons that helped win a war. Through ingenuity, intuition, and the courage to ignore conventional wisdom, he gave American tankers an edge no blueprint or manual could provide. The Continental engines in those Shermans roared across Europe in 1945, carrying men to victory at speeds designers never imagined, with reliabilities engineers never calculated, accomplishing feats critics claimed impossible. Every engine hides potential waiting to be discovered. Rated limits are starting points. What seems impossible often only means no one has tried hard enough. The fastest Sherman in World War II, the tank that outran a Jeep, the Moonshine Special that rewrote armored warfare, began as a crashed wreck and a crazy idea from a mechanic everyone called mad. Curtis Hammond proved that sometimes madness is just genius, not yet recognized. He showed that solving an impossible problem often requires ignoring those who insist it can't be done and simply building the solution. One wrecked tank, one stubborn mechanic, 47 miles per hour that shattered conventional wisdom. That is the legacy of Technical Sergeant Curtis Lee Hammond, the moonshiner from Tennessee, who hot-rodded his way into military history and saved hundreds of lives by refusing to accept good enough. In a war defined by industrial might, the decisive advantage sometimes came not from Detroit factories, but from a maintenance tent in Germany. There, a determined, unconventional mechanic looked at a broken Sherman and saw not what it was, but what it could become.